McNut here. Welcome to Intelligence, a place for true stories of survival, adventure, and innovation. Subscribe if that's your jam. Are you a fan of surviving escape rooms or haunted houses? I mean, truly haunted houses with spirits that threaten you and throw things like knives or maybe push you down the stairs? Well, I'm going to tell you about a haunted house with bucket loads of documents and witnesses. I'm talking about the real-life Conjuring House. Now, I don't watch horror movies, but it's not for the reason you might think. It's because they scare the living hell out of me and put images in my mind castle that roam the halls of my brain for weeks. A couple of years ago, I was given an assignment to go to what is considered to be one of the scariest and most haunted houses in North America, a place factually plagued by gruesome deaths and dark tragedies, many of which have been documented. If there ever was a place that would logically be haunted, this is it. The entire Conjuring franchise consists of 8 movies, with another announced for 2025. The original movie is loosely based on the reportedly true story of what happened to the Perron family and the subsequent investigation by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the principal subjects of the Conjuring universe. But the real-life horror story of what happened on that property in Rhode Island seems to have begun prior to the formation of the United States. Built in 1736, the house has witnessed nearly 3 centuries of human life and death. For generations, families have lived within its walls, and for generations, a darkness seems to have lingered over this house. But 2 families in particular would come to know its darkness all too well. The story begins with the Arnold family. They were among the first settlers in the Rhode Island area, carving a life out of the wilderness with their bare hands and sheer determination. But the land's beauty came with hardships. Over the years, tragedy struck the Arnolds time and time again. Deaths by illness, accidents, murder, and even suicide plagued the family line for many generations. One of the most tragic events involved a young girl related to the Arnolds who had her throat cut by a rejected suitor. The details are sparse, but local legends indicate that the young man, enraged after being rejected, took her life on the property. Another death linked to the Arnold family is that of an older woman, Mrs. John Arnold, who hanged herself in the barn not long after her husband died. The event is one of the most frequently cited tragedies when discussing the paranormal activity of the house, so yes, she will pop up again. Prudence Arnold was a member of the extended Arnold family who died under violent circumstances. She was brutally murdered at the age of 11 in 1849. Prudence was attacked and killed by a farmhand named William Knowlton in nearby Uxbridge, Massachusetts. Although this death did not occur on the property itself, her family's connection to the Arnold house ties her tragic end to its haunted legacy. John Arnold, believed to be one of the original owners or closely related to the family lineage, is reported to have taken his own life. According to accounts, he was found hanging in the barn, much like the older woman before him. The circumstances surrounding his death remain vague, but it's said that the weight of the family's misfortune had grown too heavy for him to bear. While the names do suggest that John Arnold and Mrs. John Arnold would be a part of the same couple, they are from 2 different generations of the same family tree. Following the Arnold family lineage of tragedy is difficult enough, but things get really tricky with the introduction of a mysterious woman who is rumored to have been an actual witch, practicing dark arts and satanic rituals. Imagine a quiet rural village in the 1800s where one woman's name is whispered with fear and suspicion. Bathsheba Sherman. There were rumors that she struck a deal with the devil himself. According to the locals, Bathsheba wasn't just mysterious, she was also cruel. She is said to have cursed the very land around her and mistreated her children. But the most chilling rumor, that she once sacrificed an infant as an offering to Satan. The townspeople apparently told tales of a child who died under her care, found with a wound at the base of its skull, so perfectly punctured as if by a sewing needle. Despite these terrifying accusations, there are no records of Bathsheba being formally charged with murder or witchcraft. But apparently, that infant's death cast a dark shadow over her reputation, leaving her ostracized, a woman shunned by her own town. Long after her death, the legacy of Bathsheba's supposed evil grew, haunting her name for generations. In the 1970s, the Perron family became the owners of the property that served as a home to the many tragedies of the Arnold family, and a new chapter of supernatural occurrences soon began. Shortly after taking ownership of the farm, Carolyn Perron, mother of 5 young daughters, began to experience paranormal occurrences and even physical attacks that left bruises and cuts on her body. According to Andrea Perron, Carolyn's oldest daughter, the first supernatural event happened to the youngest sister of the family. Late at night, the young girl came to Andrea's room terrified. She said that voices were scaring her and she couldn't get to sleep. Andrea asked what the voices were saying. These otherworldly voices, almost chanting in angry unison over and over, that there were 7 dead soldiers buried in the walls. Unfortunately, this was just the beginning of many terrifying events. After several incidents like oddly cold areas, the unexplained smell of rotting meat, and being shoved down the stairs, Carolyn desperately set out to find answers and increase her odds of surviving. With the help of a local historian, she stumbled upon the name of Bathsheba Sherman. Carolyn was certain she had discovered the source of her attacks, so she contacted the next best thing to the Ghostbusters, Ed and Lorraine Warren, well known for their investigations of the Annabelle doll and, later on, the haunted house of Amityville. Ed was a non-certified, self-taught demonologist recognized by the Catholic Church. Lorraine was a clairvoyant as well as a trance medium, meaning she could get into a trance to better communicate with spirits and whatnot. Clearly, these 2 supernatural detectives were destined for a Hollywood movie franchise. And yes, shit was about to get real. Carolyn told the Warrens that Bathsheba's spirit might be tied to the haunting at the Perron family home. The Warrens confirmed the presence of Bathsheba and believed that she was driven by vengeance and power. While Carolyn felt certain Bathsheba was the primary culprit of her nonstop journey of torture, Bathsheba wasn't the only spirit to have a go at this mother of 5. Remember the 93-year-old woman who hanged herself in the barn? Well, she also had an axe to grind with Carolyn. Actually, it was a scythe. Carolyn awoke in the middle of the night to find the spirit of an old lady with a broken neck hanging off to one side, hovering over her, face to face. The spirit spoke. "'Twas mistress once before ye came, and mistress here will be anon." A clear warning that this spirit was the matriarch of what was, for many generations, the Arnold family home. Not long after that, Carolyn went into the barn, the same barn Mrs. John Arnold had hanged herself in, and glanced up to see a scythe laying high on a beam. She says the cutting tool lifted, spun rapidly, and came flying at her, slicing her across the neck as she tried to dodge the attack. That event certainly justified the price of a long-distance call in the 1970s to the supernatural investigative couple of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine suggested that Bathsheba was likely responsible for much of the dark energy in the home and believed she may have cursed the land or practiced witchcraft in her lifetime. Lorraine, through research and whatever else she had access to, suggested that Bathsheba lived nearby, had been accused of witchcraft, and, in Lorraine's view, felt a particular hostility toward Carolyn Perron, possibly viewing her as an intruder or a rival. By this point, Carolyn had experienced a range of attacks which led Lorraine to conclude that Bathsheba might be acting out of jealousy, wanting to be the woman of the house. Apparently that's a bit of a sticking point with spirits. Ed and Lorraine also warned the parents that acknowledging and engaging with entities could strengthen them. The paranormal couple advised caution, particularly when it came to addressing Bathsheba directly, as it could provoke a more aggressive response. Despite the Warrens' guidance, the disturbances continued, and Carolyn experienced escalating physical attacks. The family reported more intense manifestations, including moving objects and terrifying apparitions. Lorraine agreed that Bathsheba's influence was growing, specifically targeting Carolyn's physical and mental health. The Warrens decided that stronger spiritual intervention was necessary to counter the severity of this supernatural entity. Carolyn was desperate and decided to go along with the radical suggestion of holding a séance to communicate directly with the spirits. Yes, direct communication is the exact opposite of the initial advice. Lorraine believed this could help them understand the entity's intentions and, hopefully, convince it to leave. The night of the séance at the Perron home was straight out of a horror movie, or in this case, later motivated a horror movie. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Ed and Lorraine Warren prepared their ritual. Carol and Perron sat at one end of the table, nervous and exhausted, but determined to find a solution. She was finally going to confront whatever darkness was attacking her home. The Perron children huddled close, watching from a nearby doorway. Lorraine began her attempts to make contact, calling out the spirit she believed was responsible, urging it to reveal itself. A cold silence fell over the room. As Lorraine made her demands, Carolyn's face changed. Her eyes glazed over, and a shadow seemed to settle upon her. She began to mutter in a voice not her own. It was low, guttural. She used profanities and threats against all who had gathered. Her body contorted, her fingers clawing at the table as if trying to resist some unseen force pulling at her soul. The children were instantly terrified as their mother transformed into something else. Suddenly, Carolyn's body convulsed violently. The heavy old farm table lifted off the ground, as did Carolyn in the chair she was sitting in. Then, in an instant, as if struck by some invisible, powerful hand, the massive table slammed to the floor as Carolyn was flung into the next room, crashing down near a stone fireplace with a skull-crushing thud. The entire family heard her head hit against the hardwood floor. Carolyn wasn't moving. She seemed truly lifeless. Carolyn's husband, Roger, rushed to her side, his face pale, his voice cracking as he called her name, but she was unresponsive, her body motionless. Roger, who never wanted the séance to happen in the first place, punched Ed in the face, spilling blood from his smashed nose. The children sobbed, frozen in horror, unable to understand what they had just witnessed. Lorraine whispered prayers, her voice shaking as she tried to regain control of the séance, but the damage had been done. Whatever force had latched onto Carolyn seemed to have suddenly abandoned her now limp and seemingly lifeless body. Roger, filled with fury and fear for his wife, demanded that the Warrens leave, certain that they had only stirred the darkness rather than eradicated it. Carolyn slowly stirred and eventually became aware of what had happened. The parents had hoped the séance would bring an end to the terror, but instead it illustrated just how powerless they really were. There was no doubt for the family that they were not alone, and that whatever shared their home with them was far more powerful and far more dangerous than they had previously imagined. Understandably, Roger Perron ended all associations with the Warrens after the séance. The family continued to live in the house for several more years. They claimed the attacks and supernatural occurrences continued, but as you do with bad neighbors, you learn to live with the circumstances. Andrea Perron, the oldest of the siblings, has an interesting take on the events. She acknowledges all of the scary, supernatural, and otherworldly events, but believes that it wasn't all bad. According to her, the house was packed with spirits, and she believed the location to be a portal that allowed different worlds or times to cross paths. She claims she began to find comfort in some of the strange events that she witnessed, as well as have a deeper understanding of what the long-standing house had experienced. I went to the house a few years ago as part of a TV crew doing a story on the infamous hauntings and, of course, the Perron family. I met Roger, the dad, as well as Andrea, his oldest daughter. Personally, I found the house to be a wonderful property. If I didn't know about the history, I would have just thought, what a neat place to grow up. However, to be honest, there were a couple of incidents that did give me pause. A door rattling as if someone was shaking it from the other side when no one was there was the first incident. I really didn't think much of it, but while we were setting up a shot upstairs where the host of the show and Andrea would walk toward the camera as Andrea shared one of the significant stories, I was certain I saw someone walk across a hallway and go into another room. I called out and told them we were about to start and they should go downstairs. No answer. I called again. No answer. Now, I hadn't been down that hallway yet, so I wasn't aware of the floor plan. I thought there were rooms on both sides of the hallway and that someone had walked into a room on the left. There were no rooms on the left, only a wall. Who did I see and where did they go? I laughed it off and kind of rolled my eyes at the experience, but just a few minutes later, I had the host go to the end of the same hall and stand in a room on the right so she could be hidden from the camera to start the scene. On my action, she would exit the room and walk to the camera. Before the cameras even started rolling, she quickly exits the room and hurries towards the crew saying, "Nope, I'm not going back in there." I asked her what happened, and she said that it was hard to explain, but it was like something in that tiny room wanted her to get out now. So she did. Now, the host had never behaved this way in any other episode. The following day, a similar incident happened where the host felt as if a childlike presence was demanding her attention after she thought she saw someone walking just a few feet away. Security cameras confirmed that no one was there. We had to go to another room to complete the scene because whatever she was sensing in that room wouldn't leave her alone. So, is the Conjuring House haunted? Well, no doubt it has a very disturbing history that is well documented, and I didn't even share every tragedy that fell upon the original Arnold family. It's a long list. I will leave you with this, though. Remember the malevolent spirit that Mother Carolyn and investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were certain was the primary culprit? Well, it turns out poor Bathsheba Sherman was just the wife of a farmer working as hard as everyone else to make a living in a very difficult time. And get this, there doesn't seem to be any documentation that a child who died in her care had a hole pierced at the base of the skull with a sewing needle. In fact, there doesn't seem to be any documentation that a child died in her care, or at least I couldn't find it. There's also nothing to substantiate that she was ever a witch, made a deal with the devil, or was even cruel. There's nothing tying her to the Arnold family or the property at all, although she did live about a mile away. The first incident of these stories seems to come from Carolyn Perron while she was desperately searching for answers. These stories appear to be something that only Carolyn discovered and was then confirmed by the investigative supernatural power couple of Ed and Lorraine Warren. But Carolyn seems to have been attacked many times. Her fear was real. Her injuries were real. The children experienced similar feelings of terror all too often. So what was going on? What was the source of these frightening attacks? What was causing this family to see and experience things that defy explanation? It's impossible to say, but I am confident that if the walls of the Conjuring House could talk, we'd all have nightmares. Thanks for watching. McNut out.
The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout.